Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, welcoming you back to another live stream here Thursday. Of course, Tuesday, we took a look at Daggerheart, me and Bob and Aaron in the studio. And that was actually our best performing video of all time. So go figure. You talk about, I don't know, a Critical Role game on the day it comes out and people come and watch it. So if you're new to us, sorry to disappoint you, because normally this is what our channel is about. It's about talking about obscure GM topics. It's about talking about gaming as a philosophy, as a lifestyle. It's talking about obscure small press indie games. So hopefully you're not too disappointed, but you know, I encourage you to stay a while and listen. I think it could be mutually beneficial for all of us, and hopefully you'll give us a shot. That being said, if you're not subscribed, please feel free to do so. And remember to like this video so that maybe some other people can see us and we can continue to spread the good word. Anyways, so tonight is our Thursday night stream where it's just me at home in my home office and talking to you all about whatever it is that the patrons want to talk about. And of course, every week I typically put a poll out to discuss what the patrons want to talk about. And today it was a very, very close. We almost had a talk about Numenera or Cypher and talk about new RPG Who Dis, which won out just barely. So we're going to be talking tonight about sort of my philosophy and my approach to introducing a new game. And I wrote down before the stream about 10 tips. So we're actually going to try to make this somewhat sensible. And I'm actually going to try to keep this pretty timely because there's some really bad thunderstorms that are supposed to be coming in. And I don't know. I feel like the internet potentially, we've been having some internet difficulties in general. I just feel like we possibly are in for some internet disruption. So we're going to try to be quick about it. Shout out to Roll for Tarako, who is here catching his or their first live stream. Awesome. Well, welcome. Let's see here. Omniscient Toad says, my method has been to wait till my friends are old and mellowed out and have no time for long campaigns and are happy for any opportunity to play anything as long as the commitment is low. Well, that certainly works, Omniscient Toad. Shout out to Beowulf, who's in chat as well. Pepper is here as well. Howdy to Kyle with that sexy blue support badge. Thank you, Kyle. Bob is informing us that this is a Daggerheart channel now only. Smart topic, both evergreen content and timely given the Daggerheart beta launch. Yeah, there we go. Keeping it going. Claude says he loved that stream and currently watching their solo game of Daggerheart. Cannot wait. Awesome. So again, I'm expecting us to have a fairly small, intimate stream tonight. So if you do have thoughts or comments or questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. And of course, if you want to throw us a super chat or a tip our way, there's a link in the description below to our tip, where you can give us money via PayPal, or you can use the YouTube algorithm and give us to us via super chat. We always like to have a couple nice little tip goals, which I'll be leaving up through next week, because next week I'll be in Las Vegas on Thursday, which means, you know, sometimes we do a stream from Vegas, sometimes I don't. So we'll leave this tip goal up and see if we can knock it out. Jan is here, says, hiya or heya from the Czech Republic. It's midnight here, so this will be my lullaby stream. Well, hopefully the smooth sounds of the RE20 will lull you off to sleep. Chris Chillingsworth says, about to introduce my kids to Root RPG after watching your group playthrough on the channel. Well, hopefully, Chris, your game is a little less mature than our game was, because, you know, things got a little heated there in our Root campaign. I'm here for the lulz. Most of my group is so tired of 5e, I don't have to try. Well, that's also pretty good. So let's shoot over to the guessed it, to the whiteboard. Boom, there we go. We're already there. It will be a tailored experience. That's very good. And again, that's the thing that I really appreciate about the Root RPG. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a violent game. You could play it much more like, Redwall or I'm trying to think of another anthropomorphic animal critter, type story. You can play it much more like that. You don't have to do it the way that we did it. I enjoyed the juxtaposition that sort of experience kind of gave us. All right, so this is these are my tips, I guess. All right. So again, this is these are 10 tips. Okay, for new RPGs. I was looking up whiteboard emojis before we started. Now, a couple of things. We'll get into the details on some of these, but before we get into this, I think the number one tip is is you have to have a discussion with your group, okay? And we had a tip coming in.
JMH tipped $15, introducing new money to this content creator. As always, thanks for your work.
JMH, thank you for your sign of appreciation. I very much appreciate you supporting us. And of course, folks like JMH and our patrons are why I'm able to do the channel that I am able to do. I'm able to focus on pretty much anything I want or anything they want. I don't have to worry about the algorithm. I don't have to follow the clickbait. I don't have to follow the controversies or the drama. I just talk about what interests me and what interests my patrons. And so I really appreciate folks like you, JMH, for taking that leap. And even a couple dollars already makes you one of the most most people don't support any of the YouTube channels that they watch. So for you to do that is very big deal. So thank you so much for that. So you have to have a discussion with your group, and you got to be honest here about this. Okay, honestly. And what I mean by this is there's a couple of things. Number one, you have to make sure, okay, that there is interest. I think that the number one problem that I see when people try to introduce a new RPG to their group, quite frankly, is the GM. Sometimes it's a player too. I'm assuming most of the time this is going to be the GM, but I should say it could be a player. You typically have a player or a GM who becomes really interested in some other RPG. And they just want to, they are doing it very selfishly, okay? They are trying to basically use their group as a guinea pig, and in some cases, even sort of misleading them because they want to play this new game. And anytime you do that, you are just setting yourself up for failure. For a group to enjoy an RPG experience, okay, it has to be opt-in, okay? It has to be opt-in. Holding an ultimatum over people's heads and saying, we're going to play this or else, sure, maybe people will go ahead with it. Maybe people will go along with it. And we'll actually talk about this here in a little bit. But, I think that, by and large, you need to make sure that people should have to prove to you that they want to be there, because I'm telling you, and I'm telling you this is the first tip. The reason why this is the first tip is the biggest source, in my opinion, of new RPGs failing with groups. And we'll get into other tips about the rules complexity and pre-gens and all this other stuff. But the number one biggest cause of new RPGs failing is the GM says, hey, group, I'm really excited about, Daggerheart, or I'm really excited about Fabula Ultima, and I really want to play this, game. And, some of the players go, yeah, that sounds fine, or that sounds cool. There's just like a little bit of interest. And then you'll have one player or maybe two players who are basically kind of like, I like the game that we're playing. I like 5e. I like Pathfinder 2. I like Call of Cthulhu. I like the game that I'm playing. And there might be a variety of reasons why they do not want really to play another game. And they basically, come up with a list of reasons for why the game that you're playing is good, why the new game is problematic, but then they say the worst thing because you, the GM, you're trying to sort of convince them, right? You're trying to assemble a quorum of players. And you're like, I have a small group and I want to include everybody and I want to have as many players as I want. Plus, you were thinking very, again, selfishly. You want to convert them. It's like a cult. You want to bring them over to your side and become really interested in this game. But you know what? I have learned through many failed relationships and over the years, you can't change people. Not really. Not really. Another way of saying it is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So what ends up happening a lot of times is you get these very negative sort of Debbie Downer players who ultimately go, all right, fine. I mean, I'll come, I'll play, of course, I'll play. And you might even be thinking, oh, this is the player I want to convert. But they are already a skeptic. They are already a cynic. They don't want to join in. And you know what happens? They will pick your game apart. They will fulfill this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. They will self-sabotage their own experience so that they are right in their own mind. And I'm not trying to say that they're doing this like maliciously. I'm just saying I've seen it happen again and again and again. If somebody goes into an RPG experience expecting to have a bad time or expecting the game to be flawed, and remember, they might have their agenda. They might be thinking, and again, maybe not maliciously, but they're thinking, well, if this game session goes really well, then maybe everybody else is going to want to switch over to Fabula Ultima. And then what's going to happen to my 5e campaign? And then what's going to happen to all the 5e books that I'm at? And then I'm going to have to buy new Fabula Ultima books. And I'm going to have to learn a whole new system. And what they will do is they will sabotage your session. And what'll end up happening is because you have, RPGs, there's a saying from it's the first quote from Dune by Princess Irulan, which is, the beginning is the time for the most delicate care. Basically, a beginning is a very delicate time. And that first session, it just is the groundwork for everything. And if it goes poorly, as it will, when you have somebody who is, you need all cylinders firing, right? If you have one problematic player, and I mean like someone who is just kind of like, oh boy, this is taking a long time. Gee, wow, that's a really incredible mechanic. Wow, they don't have that in 5th edition. Wow, okay, this is so good. Oh, really? Oh, I missed. I thought this game was supposed to be so much better than PF2. Oh, okay. If you have somebody who's doing that, and they don't even have to be doing it at that absurd level of disrespect, if they are just kind of exuding that aura, it's going to cause your first session, this very delicate beginning time, to maybe not even fail, but fall flat. And then when the group kind of gets together to sort of do the post-mortem, this player is going to say, and maybe the other players are going to go, yeah, it was okay, but it wasn't like great. I don't know that we should change. And this other player is going to be like, yeah, see, I told you it wouldn't work. I told you there'd be problems. I told you. You're trying to steer a very, very big ship. It takes a lot of momentum to shift it. And so if you have a group of players who is not at least 90% bought in, I'm telling you, this is a flawed approach. And that could be really difficult. And I know a lot of people have a lot of social reasons why they can only play with this one group of players, or why they can, maybe one of the players in their group is a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend or a partner of some sort. Maybe it's a brother or a sister, or a cousin. And there's social reasons. And again, like I said, it's not malicious. The reason why I say it's not malicious is I might really look forward to our Saturday night game. And this is like my opportunity to see my friends, and it's my opportunity to see my, socialize and have, pizza and maybe have a couple beers or whatever. This is like my release. This is my time that I can have fun. And when the group, I'm not going to leave that, right? That is too important to my social identity and to my personal needs. So when the group starts saying we want to change to a different game, even if I'm not interested in that game, I'm very likely to go, well, I still want to play, because even though I have no interest in that game, or I think that game sucks or whatever, I don't want to give up on my social agenda. However, they're thinking, but if the session kind of goes bad, then we'll go back to playing the game that I'm very comfortable with. Okay. So to that end, you need to have an open discussion with your group. And the most important thing here is you need to have players to opt in. In other words, the default assumption when the GM presents this, or, whatever, when you present the option, hey, I want to play this game, the default assumption should be that everybody's answer is no. And as a GM, I think if you're trying to run this game, you should almost be, it should almost be like an interview where it's like, you need to prove to me that you want to play this game. And I know what you're thinking. That sounds impossible. That sounds difficult. Yeah, it is. Now, this may mean that prior to this, you have other discussions with your group where you explain why you want to try this game out. And that sort of kind of takes me to my second tip, which is, try a new game as a palate cleanser. Okay? I know it could be very tempting. The hot new free league game comes out and you want to run it. And you're like, this campaign's kind of, it's on life support anyways. It's fine. What I'm saying is, don't do that. Respect the mutual campaign that your group is building together. Wait until maybe the campaign ends, okay? Or maybe, several players are out of town and you have just a couple players, and normally you would cancel. And you say, hey, instead of canceling, how about we play this, Fabula Ultima one-shot, or we come over and play Dragonbane, okay? So wait until the campaign and the players are in a natural sort of stopping point. Don't make them have to choose by basically saying, hey, I know we've got this really cool campaign going on, but I really want to try this new game. Because players are going to think, so if we like the new game, or if this session goes well, we're going to what? Put a bullet in our current campaign? Now, Pepper asks a great question. What if you're burning out as the GM on the current system? Pepper, this is and I'll be honest with you, Pepper, I don't have the best advice here, because I'll tell you what, your players will resent you, okay? Like, it's like based on my personal experience, okay? Like, it's like a relationship, okay? I was dating a girl for many years, and the relationship sort of started to die off, and I wasn't feeling it anymore, and I initiated a breakup. I ended that relationship. And then it just so happened that, like, within a month, I met this other girl, and we started dating. Not like anything serious, but the other girl, the girl I had dated previously for a very long time, assumed that the reason I ended our relationship was because I already knew this girl. That's who I wanted to be with, that I was cheating on her or whatever, which I was not. She assumed then she assumed the worst, that I ended the relationship so that I could be with this new person. If you're burning out, let's say you're running your Pathfinder 2 campaign and you're burned out as a GM, and you go, guys, I'm burning out. I can't run this campaign anymore. Hopefully you have players who understand that. And then everybody kind of stops. And then you go, oh, by the way, you guys want to play Dragonbane? Your players sort of hopefully had a degree of empathy for you, because they felt like, wow, okay, it sucks that we have to give up on our campaign. We have to give up on our characters because the GM just isn't feeling it. But if you then take that and then immediately spin it off into a new campaign, right? That's like the new stepdad or the new stepmom coming in. The kids are going to resent you because they're going to feel like you just swapped them out and maybe even that you played them. And so that is a very dangerous situation to be in. Now, obviously, if you have a very mature group of players who you know very, very well, you can have very open and honest conversations with them. Again, this is going back to point one. But I do think that you need to find a very natural stopping point with your group. And it's even to the point, too, where a lot of GMs, this is not really a tip, but, the grass is not always greener. And what I mean by that is a lot of times it's not, the GM doesn't even necessarily, like, they put too much hope on this new, if we do something, the campaign's failing or whatever, but if we do something new, if we do something exciting, that'll revitalize me and that'll get me, interested in the games again. And that's the problem, sort of. But at that point, you're just chasing the high of something new. And that alone can be a problem. And a lot of times GMs will they will lie to themselves and basically be like, no, this new game is so much better. This new game is so much better. Because they just, they need it to be different. And that can always be a very big problem. I mean, if you're going to try a new game, you have to be open and honest with yourself and with your group that maybe this game isn't right for you, for the group, okay? Because, again, it's an RPG. I'm telling you, everybody needs to be on board. And so my best advice is if you do want to try a new game, you got to do it as a sort of palate cleanser. Do it on a break. Do it between campaigns. Do it on, build that in, set that expectation in advance even, all right? And don't set it up as like the PCs have to choose between continuing the campaign or nothing. Like you might say, hey, I've been getting I'm really excited about this new RPG. How about after we finish the current adventure that we're on, but before we start the next adventure, maybe we take a Friday or two, and I just kind of want to try this game as sort of a change of pace, a little bit of a palate cleanser as we sort of shift from this adventure to the next adventure. It's kind of a good breaking point. And I'll be honest with you all, I'm excited about potentially playing this game. Maybe with you all, maybe with other people that I know from the internet. Maybe I know them from the Knights of Last Call Patreon, where community games are happening every day. But again, I'm not trying to deceive them. I'm not trying to lie to them. I'm not basically being like, hey, we just had that really cool adventure. Hey guys, you want to play this Dragonbane really quick? And then everyone goes, wow, that was a lot of fun. You're like, oh, okay, well then I'm canceling our PF2 campaign and we're now playing Dragonbane. Players will feel like you bait and switched them. And you know what? You did bait and switch them. So yeah, don't do that. Make sure that the timing is right and that the group is on board with it. Now, of course, some of you might say, but I have players who are completely against this idea. They don't want to participate. They are, completely against it. Well, guess what? 3. Don't be afraid to exclude your players. Okay? Who are not interested. I know this is a tough conversation to have, but again, it goes back to what I was saying in the first 2 points. This will be a poison pill that will destroy your game. So if you, again, make them prove, show people the facts, let them make up their own mind. Hey, group, we're off in a couple of weeks and I'm going to run a game of Fabula Ultima. If we've talked a little bit about it. If you're interested, hit me up. Let me know. Do not assume that everybody's invited. In fact, you might even say, I'm assuming none of you are going to come unless you deliberately say so. And if you have a player who is very ambivalent or on the fence about it, tell them, hey, it's okay if you sit this one out. I know you're really into your 5e campaign. Don't worry, we're going to be continuing that 5e campaign. But if you're not interested, you're not interested, and there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to feel like you're a lesser person. Now I know. Well, I need 5 players to play. No, you don't. No, you don't. If you have two very interested and leaned in players is way better than 4 or 5 players who are just sort of like, going through the motions. So, some of this comes from hard-earned experience, and one of my players who I've been playing with for many, many decades is in the chat, and he says, yeah, players not interested will work with other players not interested to quickly end a campaign. Smith and I were great at that. And correct. That is true. And again, it's not always necessarily malicious, but it's just, if they're not interested, they're not interested, and they're not going to participate. And I know we all want to play with our friends, and we wish our friends were just as interested as we are. All right. Which brings me to my 4th tip, which is choose the right game. Pick a game that suits the interest of your group, not just you as the GM. And this is where I'm not gonna toot our horns too hard, but this is where knowing a bunch of different games can help. And let me give you a great example of this. We had one of the greats, one of our patrons, GM Scott, who had been playing with his group, D20, Pathfinder 2, the whole shebang for a long time. And GM Scott wanted to do something more narrative, wanted to do something more story focused, wanted to do something more almost, Blades in the Dark, PBTA. And I will be the first to admit that if you have a group of D20 players who are used to doing things in a D20 way and have all this other D20 stuff, and you go, here's Powered by the Apocalypse, boy, you're going to get a lot of confused looks. But due to the advice from Knights of Last Call, GM Scott learned about 13th Age. And 13th Age is a fantastic bridge between D20 game and more narrative-focused games like Blades in the Dark or Powered by the Apocalypse. It is a stepping stone to potentially new ideas and avenues. Because at the end of the day, your goal shouldn't be to play game X or game Y. The goal should be to have a great experience with your group. If you, as the GM, are changing the game that the group is going to play, then you have to be doing that for a reason. There has to be something that is not being delivered by the current game system that you are hoping that the new game system will fix. And again, if you have players who are totally fine with the game system and you're the only one with a problem, then that is going to be a tough sell, particularly if it's a very big gap between, say, your 5e game and, Monster Hearts or something. So, think about the complexity of the game. Think about the themes of the game. Think about, the types of stories that you and your group like to participate in and tell. A game that excites everyone will make the learning process that much more enjoyable, because you are asking, there is an ask there, which is the players are going to have to learn some stuff. So complexity, themes, types of stories. Consider those elements. Another thing to consider is cost. Okay. Now I am very lucky. I have a group of amazing players. I'll be the first to admit it. And when I go, hey, we're going to play Legend of the Five Rings, and I'm excited about it, and here's why. And everybody, mostly, for the most part, go, cool. And then they all go buy a Legend of the Five Rings book and a bunch of Legend of the Five Rings dice. Okay. when I say, hey, we're going to play Forbidden Lands, we sat down as a group, we weighed the pros and cons of different settings and different systems. And I said, yeah, we could play D&D, but I play D&D and I would like to try to do something new. I've not played a Year Zero engine game. Let's play Forbidden Lands. And sure enough, we did. And you know what? Everyone went out and they bought Forbidden Lands box sets and dice. So I was very lucky in that regard. But you can't expect your players to just go out and buy a game that is really expensive, which means that if you're choosing a game, either it needs to be freely available or it needs to have a banger of an introduction or beginning game, box, set or system. And we'll talk, that's kind of my fifth one, but be mindful that you're asking the players to sort of do that. Now, that being said, and I know this, this is kind of tough, but assuming that everybody is bought in, I think unless the game is very well done, I think, again, players have to show that they have a little bit of interest. They need some skin in the game. And I don't think it is too crazy to ask players, all right, to learn about the game. So I've said before, I've gone to a lot of gaming conventions, Gen Con and Origins, but I've also gone to a lot of board game conventions like BGG Con and stuff like that. And I have always had really good experiences at conventions like BGG Con because we would go to BGG Con, Board Game Geek Con, and I would sign up for board games, which I do not own. Maybe I was thinking about buying, but I had not played yet. So this was an opportunity for me to sort of try before I buy, to demo a game. But due to the way that the games are set up and structured and what they're asking for, you'd get a bunch of new people all showing up to play this game. And you know what the best part was? All of us had gone online and read the book, or we had watched this, sit up, sit down and play. We had watched the rules explanation video. We had read the manual. And what that meant is we could get right into playing. Now, was I a master of the game? By no stretch of the imagination. And there usually is the person who's running the event who is there to help coordinate and smooth over things. That would be you as the game master. But as a player, when you've already sort of become familiar with the game, that makes, number one, you have buy-in. So the players are going to, want to sort of get some value out of the time that they spent learning the game. And secondly, it's going to make for a better experience because instead of having to explain everything and spend, hours just doing rules explanations, boy, that is tough. That, you got to keep that momentum going. So I think asking players to learn about the game is totally reasonable, unless it has a bomb. Okay, a bomb-ass intro game, all right? Now, for me, when I talk about this is why I go into number 6, which is consider games with amazing intros, okay? So for me, now I don't know them all, but for me, the single greatest introductory game that I've ever experienced is the Press Start from Fabula Ultima. The Pathfinder 2 beginner box set, also very good. The Legend of the Five Rings game is very, very good. And the reason why is because these are not just one-shot set. Like, for example, I don't consider Flan Delver to be really, yes, it is the intro adventure, it's the box set, but it is not set up in that kind of way to truly explain the game to you in a way that I think is beneficial to everybody. A game like, or an intro adventure like Press Start literally has a group of pre-gens that have the abilities on their sheet locked out, and each scene as you go through this intro adventure unlocks a new element. It's almost like a video game tutorial where, the complexity is slowly ramped up. Does it cover everything in the game? Absolutely not. Do the players get all of the nuances of the game? No. And I'll be honest with you, this is an area where I have struggled in the past because I'll be like, oh man, Avatar is so cool. It's got this really amazing balance system, and it's got this totally great, interaction between the players and the way that the balance shifts can occur and the thing. And I really want the players to experience that. Well, okay, but that can also be very, very, very cognitively overwhelming. It is, Legend of the Five Rings. The intro box for Legend of the Five Rings is designed. It has pre-gens, and Legend of the Five Rings has two. It's designed as a 2-session game, so it's a 2-shot. Session 1, Session 2. It uses essentially an abbreviated version of the game, and I'm okay. I think that is smart because it is a complex game and it does have a lot of nuance to it. But you are just trying to get people bought in. And if you overwhelm them with rules and crap, it's just never going to work out well. Damien says, Star Trek Adventures and FFG, Fantasy Flight Games, have excellent starter sets. We played the Trek one. So we went through the Star Trek Adventure intro set. And again, that's also nice for you as a GM. You don't have to know everything. You're kind of just playing through the game. But, I would love to hear suggestions, but I haven't played them all. FFG Star Wars. Okay, gotcha. Edge of the Empire, that stuff. Games that have really, really good introduction sets. And it goes without saying, too, that, and again, this kind of ties into the, we'll get to it. We'll get to it later, but these box sets are really good for a lot of reasons in that they provide the players with this sort of really, really robust experience. If a game doesn't have a robust starting experience, maybe it's not the game. Or at least you should play other games to get your group used to it. We have a lot of people here in chat who have played Dragonbane. I think the Dragonbane introduction is pretty good. It's a simple game. It's dead simple, but it has pre-gens that are ready to go. And it starts you off with action and puts you into a situation, and it slowly ramps everything up. And I think it does a really, really good job. A lot of game companies have gotten really good at creating not just in level 1 adventures, but like game sort of processes that really teach you the system one step at a time. And that, I think, is worth its weight in gold because, the overriding thing here is this is a sales pitch, right? Not just you to the players, but the whole group. You have to really sell yourself and sell the group on this whole process and get the group excited about playing something else. Okay. Ryan is also talking about Daggerheart, saying the Daggerheart's sidecar sheet is so slick. I have not actually looked at the play test documents themselves or the pre-gens themselves, Ryan. So I actually don't know, but I imagine that they are fairly slick. This is actually a later tip, but I've already added an extra tip anyways. So I'm gonna do it early, but which is use visual aids or other player resources. If you're familiar with the Pathfinder 2nd Edition beginner box set, you know the kind of stuff that I am talking about here. The Pathfinder 2 beginner box set comes with this great, nice, high-quality cardboard sort of player sheet tableau that you can hand to a player, and it's got spaces on it so you can track your actions. Okay? Make it physical. Make it tangible. Use visual aids. If there was ever a time to have a nicely presented character sheet for your pre-gens set out, ready to go, make sure that if your characters are creating characters, and we can talk about that in a little bit, but make sure that you have the right character sheets and that they look nice, that you didn't just find some Word file that you printed off. If there are maps or posters, it's time to pull those out, right? You want to create a really, really robust experience. And, minis and visual aids and maps sell. Like I'm telling you, I went over to Bob's house to play the Dragonbane intro scenario. And Bob had his little Dragonbane box. He pulled it out. He puts out this gorgeous map of the Misty Vale. It comes with these great looking art stand tokens, not full miniatures, just, double-sided tokens that go into little plastic clips. But it had these really cool dice. It was a really great visual experience. And then he hands us these really nice pre-gen character sheets. It's made of a nice tooth paper. It's color. It's, look, sizzle sells, and again, if the players, if it looks like you invested in it, then the players are going to feel more okay with investing in it. And so maps, character art, little summary cards, these can all help the players play this game better. And providing resources ahead of time or giving them videos or links to cheat sheets before the game can also be a really, really, really big help. So again, I think giving your players the tools to make them interested is a good solution. And going back to point number 6, a lot of these really good beginner box sets with these amazing introductions do just that. And I think that is really, really good advice because again, it's not just about the game system, okay? It's about the experience. People play game systems, but what they remember is how they felt. What they remember is their emotional response to the evening's activities. If that emotional response was great and maybe had nothing to do with the game system, maybe it had to do with the really cool map that you pulled out, or maybe it had to really do with the really cool art, then that is going to associate a positive feeling with the experience. And they're going to be more likely to either maybe want to try again or maybe play a different game. But still, you're kind of, quote unquote, breaking them out of their mold. Because again, going all the way back to the top, to the beginning here, do not feel like it is your goal or your job to sort of awaken, the player group. And sort of enlighten them. Don't be their parents, okay? Don't do that. Be a resource, but I don't try to just shill them on basically playing a new game just so you can play a new game. I think that's disingenuous. So great visual aids, great player resources. Let me take a look here real quick at chat. KC says, had a player who couldn't distinguish a D8 from a D10 for years. The dice on, the D20, like Pathfinder 2, where the pre-gen character sheet has the different dice, what it looks like, what the shape is, because I don't know what these dice are. That's a really, really great idea. Some drinks and free food, maybe a stripper. I would have always. Now here, so Bob says drinks help. I do not think so. I actually recommend no alcohol, okay, or drugs. Okay? I actually think that is a bad idea. I think that is going to only, it just muddies the water. And it turns it from this kind of like, hey, we're actually trying to buy into this, into I don't really care about this. I'm just here to kick back. I'm just here to try something. Like, I don't think that sets the right tone. I really don't. And so while I think that if you have a group of people who are really, they know a game well, they're engaged with it, they're having fun with it, then they can drink. But I think if people are, starting off, I think that you are just heading for disaster. And Bob says, my group comes with a 6-pack in hand. That's true, Bob. But how many serious campaigns have you actually played with those people? I mean, if you're content to just run endless one-shots of different systems that just come in and come out, and your friend group is basically totally fine because they have 0% buy-in. They just want to show up to, pay barely attention and drink some beers, then by all means, keep doing that. I am assuming that your objective here is to create interest that will lead to some kind of campaign. That doesn't mean 2 years or 3 years, but definitely something more than just, hey, can I beg, borrow, or steal for you guys to come over for 2 nights and play this game? I mean, again, if that's what you want as a GM, then you're in luck, because I think that is a much, much, much smaller ask. But if what you're looking for is to actually, build that interest and get people to invest, then I think that that's a flawed approach. So basically, you have to decide, is this hangout fun night? It's like we always talk about with true role playing versus trad role playing, right? I always say, is it a game with role playing, or is it a game about role playing? Well, is tonight's hangout hanging out with role playing games, or is it hanging out about role playing games? If it's the latter, then then you need to treat that with a little bit more care and consideration, and do it that way. So that's kind of a bonus tip. This is going to be more than 10. Okay, number 9. I've gone back and forth on this for years, and I do think that this is correct. Pre-gens. I think that it is very tempting to, and I, even as I write it, I know that, like, for me, a big part of the RPG experience is getting to make a character. But you know what? This isn't 1974 anymore, okay? Unless the character creation process is dead simple and takes less than 5 minutes and almost has no choices to be made, don't bother with the character creation process. Do the character creation process separately. Maybe after you've done the first session. I think you have to do the pre-gens, because the players who are making these characters have no fucking idea how this game works, what they're doing. One of my biggest bugaboos is when someone explains how a board game works to me. And to be fair, a lot of better, Leader Games does this now. They're really good at this. Leader Games are like, the first thing they tell you in their board game is they go, hey, this is what our game is about. This is how you win the game. This is what you need to do to win the game. And then they start explaining to me the rules of the game, because now I have context and I understand why what they're telling me is important. When you're in a pre-gen and you're telling somebody to, like, hey, you need to pick a feat and, pick a skill feat, they're like, I don't even know how this game works, and you're making me pick a feat. It is a disaster. And I don't think that, unless you have a super awesome, really, really skilled group, or you're going from, if you're going from, okay, if your group has played a bunch of PBTA games before and you're going to play a new PBTA game, okay, maybe you can make characters. But for the most part, don't. Use pre-gens, and don't drop the pre-gens on the group at day 1 at the session. My advice is that you send out those pre-gens ahead of time if possible. Send them out in your group chat or in your Discord. Send them out PDF style if you have it available. And let the group even talk about which characters they're interested in. Or at the very least, say, why don't you look through these characters and find 2 or 3 that you would be interested in playing. And then when we get there, everybody can sort of pick one. And if 2 people are sort of saying, oh, I want to play it, oh, I want to play it, the other person says, oh, I'd be fine playing the Seraph or the champion. I would be fine with that. Okay, cool. I'll play the warrior then. The characters, again, this goes back to kind of what I was talking about before with the buy-in, asking players to learn about the game. And when it comes to pre-gens, maybe to even tell the players, don't even worry about the rules. Don't even worry about the mechanics. Just, what's the vibe of that character? Do you fuck with it? And if you do, great. Then that's the character you should play, So again, have some pre-gens. Don't have, don't have hundreds of pre-gens. Just give the group, give the group N+3 pre-gens if you can, right? In some cases, when you're playing with like a pre-made game, it might only come with like 4 pre-gens for 4 players or 5 pre-gens for 5 players, in which case, you're stuck. But I think if you have like a 1 or 2 more pre-gens than you do have players, it gives the players a sense of still having some agency and some choice into what characters they want. So I really recommend using those pre-gen characters. Okay. Yeah, exactly, Brian. Give people, give them the respect, teach them up, you're not trying to, deliver them this, you're not trying to teach them all of the details. You just want them to get the big picture understanding. All right. Now, this is kind of controversial as well. Okay. I would highly recommend that you do not have a session 0. Obviously, in some case, when it comes to like setting permissions and doing all that other stuff, like, you should maybe have that conversation, especially if you're playing with people who you've never played with before. So all of that goes to the same. But again, think about Princess Irulan, right? A beginning is a delicate time. You get like 3 hours with these people, okay? You might only get 2 hours of real attention with them. You have to make every second sell, all right? You need to come out swinging. You need to come out with, boom, excitement. You need to come out, you need to hook them. And you only have 2 or 3 hours to do that. If you spend the vast majority of, if people's first impression of your game was sitting around for a couple hours, making characters and talking about, themes and what you want to build your campaign world like, you're going to lose everyone. You're going to lose everyone. Session 0s are great when you have players who are invested and they want to make this, a big thing going forward. But for new games, I think it is a tragic waste of everybody's time. This might be the only time you get them to sit down. You need to start with action, okay? And you need to finish with action. You need to make it, again, this isn't about selling the rules as much as it is selling the system as it is selling the experience, all right? You want them to feel, again, they might not even really fully understand how the game works, but all they know is at the end of the night, they go, man, I had a lot of fun. And that was kind of exciting. And there was some cool mechanics going on. I didn't fully understand them all 100%, but I kind of liked what was happening. And the results were very compelling. I had a good time. My fellow players had a good time. We were all smiling and high-fiving. If that's not happening at your, first session of your new game, it's not going to work. It's going to fail. It's going to peter out. Because remember, there's an activation energy in order to get people to switch systems, right? It can't just be, if this is the kind of experience that people are having and you go, oh, look at this game. You had this much better of an experience. That they're not going to shift that. They're not going to change systems for that. It has to deliver a significantly better experience than what you might otherwise get. And if it doesn't, that people are going to say, it's not really worth changing. Think about like your job. You have a certain amount of comfort in your job, okay? If somebody were to offer you a new job making, wait for it, 50 cents more an hour, but it's a whole new job, whole new structure, whole new set of corporate underpinnings, new boss, new manager, new pay structure, have to shift your 401k. Yes, it is more money, but are you going to really go through all that hassle for 50 cents more an hour? No, you're going to stay where you are. Now, if somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm going to be paying you $10 more an hour, now maybe it's worth jumping through those hoops. Now maybe it's worth switching companies. So you have to make it worth it. And if it's not, then people won't do it, or they'll be very resentful of it and they will sort of, bounce off of that. So again, I recommend not getting into the weeds. Keep it light. Don't worry about session 0. Don't worry about character creation. Use pre-gen. Skip session 0. Again, I said I gave you some bonus tips, so I guess we're on tip 11 of 10. Simplify the rules whenever possible, okay? You get one shot at this. Now, again, I was mentioning before, what makes some of those really great, amazing intro games, okay, number 6, is that they have these sort of abbreviated rules that give you a good taste of what the game is like without inundating you with all of its massive amount of intricate details. But if you don't have that, if you're just playing the game as regular, or you're just do everything you can to simplify. Do not get bogged down with every rule from the start. If a player has a question about the rules, say, write it down or note it for later and say, hey, I'd love to talk with you about that after the session. But this is not the time to get, and even again, I'm guilty of this too, right? Because I'm a rules nerd. I like to geek out about really interesting mechanics, and I get excited. And so when we're playing the game and like something happens and I'm like, oh, look how cool this avatar system is. You see how that move triggering caused this whole chain of events, and how the GM move pushed back on you for balance, and that led to that internal okay, just don't worry about it. It'll come later. Emphasize, the grand scheme of things. Begin with the basics and introduce the more complex rules as you go. Again, I don't have many hard and fast rules here, but I'm going to give you a hard and fast rule. Simplify the rules. And 12. Don't look shit up. I know this is this is tough. Give yourself some time. If you want to, really read that book. Learn it as well as you can. But I am telling you, you can count the seconds that you have available to you in that first session of when your players go, I'm over it. Okay? You only get so many of those seconds. And I'm telling you, you don't want to burn them flipping through a rule book. Make a ruling, move on, look it up later. You're already trying to simplify the rules. Do not look up shit in the rule book. I'm telling you, there's no quicker. I mean, that could, even in a normal game with players who are playing the campaign that they've been playing for 2 months, this can make everybody check out. And once you lose them in that first session, it's very, 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 very hard to get them back. They will have made up their mind. This game sucks. My GM sucks. This campaign sucks. This table sucks. This house sucks. I don't even like this city. I'm out. So, again, really, really, really important that you keep it fast, keep it flowing, okay? Rule 13. Some of these, again, I kind of am breaking up here because you want to focus on fun, okay? Fun and storytelling. It's about the experience. Now, I'm not saying fudge through your teeth. That's not what I'm saying here at all, okay? What I'm saying is emphasize the awesome parts rather than strict adherence to the rules, okay? Keep the game flowing. Make sure everybody is engaged, enjoying themselves. I always say, one of the things that I've said on this channel before, GMs wear many hats. And one of the hats that I wear is sort of, camp counselor. And one of the reasons why I always say it's very difficult for me to play over the internet, even when people have their cameras on, is because so much of what I do as a GM is responding to people, to their body language, responding to the tone of their voice, responding to the look on their face. And so this is at its most important in a new session, because you know that moment, right? Where somebody runs into a rule, they don't really like it. I saw this recently. We started playing Forbidden Lands, okay? And, some players were more interested in playing Forbidden Lands than other players. And we kind of encountered in our first session the first kind of friction point with the rule. And I knew which player was going to have a problem with it. And I looked over at him and I could see that he was kind of like, frowning and kind of like, okay, this is dumb. And I had sort of tried to, preempt that by trying to be as focused on fun and storytelling as I can. Now, when we played this first session, I would say I played fairly fast and loose with the rules. A great example of this is my buddy Smith, which you guys know from the channel. He was a spellcaster and he had this attack. He could he's a druid, and he could kind of turn into a hybrid bear form really quick to make a big, huge swipe. All right. Like a bear claw paw swipe. And then, back to human. And they had this big stone door, and he wanted to move it with the power of the bear instead of, but the bear, the spell was very much clearly defined as this attacks, right? Rules as written, this attacks. And I said, fuck that. This is about the fun and the storytelling. I want to keep this. I want to make this a really cool scene. I want to keep the action going. I don't want to get bogged down in the minutia. And so when he asked, hey, can I transform into a bear hybrid really quick like I did before to attack? Can I do that again, but to push open this big stone door? And I said, absolutely. Okay. Focusing on the fun and the storytelling rather than the rules minutia. Okay. Now later on, it might even be possible that the player who did that comes back to you in a session or two and says, you know, that thing I did in the first session was technically really illegal. And you go, I know, but I wanted you to enjoy yourself and I wanted you to have a good time. And it felt right. And we just went with it. So focusing on the fun and the storytelling, not worrying about the rules. Again, I suffer from this. A lot of times I'm like, oh, the first session is a great opportunity for me to basically be like, let me read all the rules to you and show you how cool this rules engine or system is. But, you know, what did we learn from Mark Rosewater's 20 lessons, right? People do not, right? They think intellectually, but they respond to emotions. They respond to feelings. And so if you want to sell this experience, you have to sell the fun of it, not the interesting part, right? Don't confuse fun with interesting, all right? You need, especially, now don't get me wrong, you know, we did a stream a couple of weeks ago, right, where we talked about the fun, interesting time curve, okay? Listen, things get wild here. Actually, you know what? Hold on a sec. We might have this. Is this it? No, that's not it. Spectrum authorship. I don't know where our time derivative is of interest. But the point is, on a long enough timeline, okay, a fun game that has no depth and no crunch and no interest will lose your players, right? Because they'll get bored eventually because the game is no longer interesting. But you get a lot of leeway in the first month of a new game. There's so much new stuff in the game that you don't have to really worry about players being interested. They will be interested. There's already too much for them to handle. So the first session should never be about capturing their interest. It should be about making them have fun. Because if they have fun, then they have the motivation to want to go and learn more and actually sit down and read the character creation rules and actually ask you questions about how the game works. And maybe they are motivated to go pick up a rules manual or pick up a PDF and read on their own because they go, that was fun, right? You sold to them on an emotional level, not on an intellectual level. So you need to bypass the brain and go straight to the heart, right? So focusing on fun and storytelling, all right? And again, you know, I want to be clear with this. Just because you're focusing on the fun and the storytelling doesn't mean that you should just be like, no questions. You know, I'm not taking any questions right now. I think that you should encourage, conversation, and you should encourage questions about the game because you want people to be interested. But this is a very delicate balance, okay? Because you want to make sure that you keep the pace of the game going, okay? But creating an environment where it's okay to make mistakes, where it's okay to ask questions, right? Learning a new system can be very, very daunting. And so any sort of supportive environment can be really, really good for that. And, you know, to be very patient and not lose your shit, right? And to create a very welcoming environment. And if you can do that while making it fun and exciting, I mean, because to a certain extent, while I am not saying that you should begin by, you know, reading them every rule in the chapter, okay, or reading them every rule in the rule book. If a player asks a question about the game, that is a good sign that you're winning them over. Okay, because now they're interested. They just saw something happen in the game and they go, "Oh, that was kind of interesting. I'm kind of curious about that. I'm going to ask a question." And while I don't want you to lose the momentum of that first session, them asking a question is them showing interest. It means that it's working. They are getting interested. They are having fun. And that is leading them to be curious. And so I don't think you should not be like, "No, I'm not answering that question." Give as best of an explanation you can. Oftentimes, you know, it could be something as simple as, "Oh yeah, definitely. Like the full game has like a much broader set. I know you can get a lot deeper with the bonds, and there's camp scenes where you can like build them up between players. It's pretty cool. It's a whole thing. But you know, definitely, we'll talk about it after the session, but it's actually, you were right. It is a really neat system. And then we're back to the game, right? Acknowledge their curiosity, acknowledge their question, give them a teaser, and then get back to focusing on fun and storytelling. All right. And, the last tip of advice then, sort of summing us all up, is, kind of, again, going from fun and storytelling and encouraging conversations in question, is be patient and positive. You are going to be, for better or worse, the ambassador for this game. And transitioning to a new TTRPG can be very challenging, even just trying out a new one. So you need to be patient, not just with your group, but with yourself. You might fuck something up. You might forget the rules. You might forget how something works. You might get frustrated with your group, frustrated with yourself. I'm telling you, if you don't keep the mood positive and remember that the goal is for everyone to have fun together, you will lose the group. If you're having fun and you're smiling and you're enjoying the moment, okay, the group will. And so this is really a time for you to take that GM, that Matt Mercer GM, and crank it to 11, right? And be that really, really positive go-getter and get hyped about the game. Because if you're excited, if you're being very positive about the game and about the experience, then people will buy into that. And this, again, is all assuming that you are starting with a group that already is predisposed to being interested in the game and to wanting this experience. You cannot force people, okay, to have fun. They need to want to have fun. I don't have any kids, but I do have 2 nephews, one who is going to be 18 this year, which is wild to me. But I remember when they were little, and I remember there's a really cool amusement park in Ohio, not far from where we live, called Cedar Point, America's roller coaster. And I remember going with them when they were younger, not like little babies where they couldn't ride any of the rides, but when they were older, and my nephews were, whatever. They were young teenagers or preteens, and sometimes they would be jerks and they didn't want to do anything. And basically my sister and my brother-in-law would eventually break down into something along the lines of like, I paid $75. You're going to have fun whether you like it or not. And I was like, and it never worked. It never worked, ever. Threatening somebody and demanding that they have fun is just never a solution. That being said, you're going to be a little stressed out. There might be a lot riding on it. So you need to be patient and positive. You need to take that time to make sure that everybody's having a good experience. And, those are my 10 tips. There's 15 of them, but those are basically my 10 tips. So let me get caught up here really quick. And again, if there's any, let me just very quickly here go through these before I get into the chat. So here we go, 15 tips. All right. So tip number 1 is, again, this is 15 tips for introducing a new RPG to your group. This is, again, assuming you have a sort of established or semi-established group. Number 1, have an open, honest discussion with your group. Make sure that they are genuinely interested in a new game. Make them opt in. Don't assume that the default assumption is everybody's in, and only if they tell you they're not in are they out. No. Make them prove to you that they want to be there. Because if they don't want to be there, they will be a poison pill and they will ruin the experience. That is the number 1 killer. Okay? I'm not trying to say that they're being a dick player, but the number 1 killer of new RPG experiences is a bad apple who maybe isn't trying to be malicious, but they are going to ruin your experience. And they're going to use that as evidence to themselves and to the rest of the group, maybe even to you as the GM, about why switching or changing is a bad idea. Or maybe we should never try anything new again. We should just stick with what we know because see how bad it was last time? It's kind of like a weird form of gaslighting. Again, make sure that the players are all bought in. Number 2, when you do a new game, do it as a palate cleanser. Do it on a break. Do it when a campaign has ended or after a major milestone in the campaign. Make sure the players don't feel like you're trying to, replace their mom with a new mom. Don't make them have to resent you for killing off their campaign, killing off their character, killing off their story arcs, killing off their I wanted to beat the mission, just so that the GM could indulge themselves with a new game. All right. The grass is not always greener. Okay. Sometimes you're switching the game for the wrong reason. Right. So you need to make sure that you don't throw out the baby out with the bathwater. And if you're going to do this, you need to be open and transparent with the camp group. Don't say, hey, let's try out a new game. And then they do. And then you say, that worked really well. I had a lot of fun. I'm killing our 5e campaign and we're starting this new, Fabula Ultima campaign. That is a bait and switch, and that is not very fair to your players. Okay. Number 3, do not be, we kind of already said this, but do not be afraid to exclude your players who are not interested. You are doing them a favor. You are doing yourself a favor. You are doing all the other players a favor. And I know people have very strong social reasons for wanting to be them. Rest assured, they can come back and they can continue the campaign going on for in the future. This is not the time for you to sort of, you have to have this tough conversation, because I'm telling you that nothing will ruin your experience faster than this, is having a player who is not interested, who does not want to be there. So we've got our players situated. You got to choose the right game. Make sure that this is going to fit what your group wants or what your group is capable of handling in terms of complexity, the themes, the type of stories that you're telling. As I said before, sometimes going from 5th edition or Pathfinder 2nd edition to Powered by the Apocalypse can be too difficult. Maybe try a game like 13th Age, maybe even Fabula Ultima as a way to sort of bridge that gap. There's a lot of channels out there. Knights of Last Call is one of them. But, Dave Thomavor has an incredible channel where he covers a ton of RPGs and goes into detail about them. Learn about what different RPGs are out there and maybe try to ask questions from knowledgeable people about ways to sort of get from where you're getting. There's a really cool website called boilthefrog.com. Check it out after this if you don't. I think it's still up there. Boilthefrog.com lets you put in 2 bands. Like I could put in Dave Matthews Band and Taylor Swift. And what it will do is it will give you a series of songs and artists that will sort of take you from the style of the one musician to the other musician. So you could put in something like, death metal Killers and then put in Paramore, and it will give you a smooth transition. Sometimes you need to do that. You need to find the right game. Okay? Asking your players to learn about the game. All right. Now, again, I think the caveat here is unless it has a really great introduction and it requires no buy-in, but when you ask your players to at least do a little bit of legwork, they will be more bought in. And it doesn't mean giving them the 300-page PDF. Maybe it means you find online a 1 or 2 page summary of the basic concepts of the game. If you could do that, do that. Ask them to read this one double-sided piece of paper and nothing else. But if they can buy in a little bit, if they can learn a little bit, this is also part of the proving that they want to be there. If a player won't even read a 2-page document to play a game with you, number one, what hope do you have that they're going to read the 300-page one? And number 2, maybe that player isn't somebody you should be playing with. They won't do that for you. All right, number 6, consider games with amazing introductions. We talked about this before. In my experience of, the Pathfinder 2nd edition box set, great. Legend of the Five Rings box set, great. Nothing in my experience beats Press Start from Fabula Ultima. Even if you're not interested in playing Fabula Ultima, you just want to try something new, just so that your group could say we did something new, I would consider Press Start from Fabula Ultima, just because it's so good. All right? 7, use visual aids and other player resources. The aforementioned Pathfinder 2 box set, the Legend of the Five Rings box set, the Dragonbane box set, all come with really evocative props, great full-colored character sheets. They come with tokens, dice, beautiful maps. Make it a sizzling experience. Make it something memorable so that your players come away with this really positive attitude. This is sort of a sub-rule, but I recommend no alcohol, no drugs. There's a time and a place to have fun and party. I think that you need to set the expectation that this is really an opportunity for the players to experience the game as is. They might have be like, that was so much fun, but they only had fun because they were blasted. So be considerate now. If what you want is just endless one-shots, trying out new different games every couple weeks, getting together, getting hammered, then by all means continue. Number 9, very controversial. I used to feel, actually, it was the opposite of this, and I have come to realize it is best to use pre-gens. Just get right into it, all right? Ideally, send out the pre-gens in advance. Let the players look over them, even if they don't necessarily fully understand everything. You want to get them interested, and you want them to have already sort of a sense of idea of who they might want to play, because you really want to get to playing as soon as you possibly can. To that end, number 10, no session 0. This is not a time to be like waxing philosophical. You need to start with action. You need to keep them interested. You need to keep it moving. And you need to be, if the players aren't high-fiving you and each other and they're not having a great time and laughing and really enjoying the experience, you will lose them. Number 11, simplify the rules. Some of these intro box set games already do this, but this is not a time to be, if you're playing Pathfinder 2, it is not the time to be talking about how, targeting rules work with concealment. Save that shit for later, okay? Keep it fast. Keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. To that end, don't look shit up either. Make a ruling and move on. Nothing will kill your game faster than you sitting there flipping through some random page. The players already don't care. Now they're really not going to care. Focusing on the fun and the storytelling by keeping the experience feral and worrying more about the vibe of the session, you are going to create an emotional response. And that is going to be far more beneficial to your task, which is to get your players interested in continuing this process, than it is appealing to them intellectually. That being said, you should encourage conversation and questions. Don't let this distract from the momentum. But a player who is asking a question is showing interest. And that is something you want to nurture. And that is something that you want to encourage. And lastly, be patient and positive with yourself. Be patient and positive with your group. This is your time to really ham it up, to sell it, to crank the charisma all the way up to 18 and be an ambassador for this game. And if you aren't having a good time, if you seem stressed or frustrated, it is not going to work out for your player group. Okay? So let me check the chat real quick here. Let's see here. Alia says, damn, so much of this is relatable. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us have gone through this. Damien says, the one thing OSR gets correct is fun at the table, ruling over rules. Yes, and this is one of the reasons why people can have these really amazing experiences with OSR games. And, Dragonbane actually does fall into this category. I sometimes think that a lot of people lose steam after a time because the interest wanes, because the games aren't as complex as maybe they want them to be. But a lot of times it really grabs people really quickly in that first instance because it's so exciting and because it's so much fun. The intellectual part of the brain is skipped and it gets right to the emotional part, and people get really passionate about this new OSR game they played because they're like, I felt emotions and I felt feelings and I haven't felt those in a long time. Kurt says, I found this channel when I was getting into the Root RPG. I'm new to RPG in general and have learned a lot by watching you play through. I'm going to implement these tips when my group gets together. Awesome, Kurt. Well, that Root RPG is, that's a spicy meatball, but, hopefully you don't have to necessarily go as hard in the paint as we did. Yeah, you got to save the nerd hype for the Discord. I agree. Pepper says, my group loves the Fabula Ultima camp scenes. Yeah, exactly. And, the intro press start gives you that great camp scene, so you can kind of experience that a little bit. It doesn't go full into the camp scene rules. This is not the time to be pulling this all out. Just, let it have your moment, move on. I would like to introduce you to Galaxies in Peril, except I don't own it, so you'll have to buy it and read it for both of us. Yeah, this is something that actually came up on Reddit here a little bit, which is like, is it impolite as a player to ask your GM to learn a game and run it for you? And I think the answer is no, if you buy the game for them. If you're willing to buy the game, gift it to your GM, not just give it to them and say, but you're just borrowing it. No, if you buy the GM the book and they take a look at it and say, I'd love for you to run us through this. Can I buy you the Legend of the Five Rings beginner box? And if you're willing, I'd love for you to read it and learn it and, run it for us. I think that's okay to ask. Piro is torn between the old catch up or jump in. It's always a tough one, Piro. Andrew is also behind, but you said maybe the Daggerheart will bring other people in. Well, I came for MCDM and stayed for the great content. Well, that's great, Andrew. I appreciate it. And again, I think the MCDM has a lot of promise. I mean, it goes without saying that Daggerheart is a more polished product than what MCDM had. I mean, MCDM's was very clearly a early beta playtest. Technically, so was Critical Roles, but my God, it seemed pretty damn finished to me. So I'd be amazed if they really changed that much. KC, for number 3, if it's a palate cleanser after a campaign, but the rest of the group falls in love and wants to switch for the next campaign, how do you discuss with the person who decided to sit out? Great question. It's a great question. It's a tough conversation to have. Nobody wants to exclude a group, but you cannot allow the default is everybody goes to the lowest common denominator. Okay? And that can feel very inclusive, but it is not fair to the other players. Now, you can have an open conversation with them and explain why it is that you want them to be a part of the group, or why do they want to be a part of the group, and how everybody else is really excited about this. And if you feel convinced that they do want to learn and they do want to participate and they're willing to show like some interest, then you can have them included, and maybe they play for a couple of sessions, and even tell them that. Say, look, I'm not going to ask you to commit to this entire campaign, but the rest of the group had a really great time, and we all have sort of wanted to play something different. Our campaign is finished, and this is a great opportunity for us to do that. Now, I'm not saying that this campaign is going to be 2 years long, but everybody wants to play for at least a good couple of months and really get a feel for this game. Now, I know that this isn't your type of game, but I'm willing, if you are, to bring you into the campaign on a trial basis. We won't make your character a major part of the story arc, and you can come for just a few sessions. If you like it and you're enjoying it, great. Then we can incorporate you in and you can be a part of it. If not, then it's okay for you, it's okay for me, for you to sit this one out. Maybe the next campaign will be the one that you really want to do. We're still your friend. We still love you. If you want to hang out for a board game night, if you want to get a beer, that's great. But I can't let the fact that you only want to play this one game hold the rest of us hostage. I don't think that's fair to anybody. I'm willing to extend you this opportunity to join us and play. But if it feels like you're not loving it, either you should feel free to say, you know what, I tried it. You're right. It isn't for me, and I am going to sit down. Or you need to be okay with me coming to you and saying, this is not working out. And maybe, the rest of us can't suffer through you being miserable and huffing and puffing over there because we do want to play this. Now, of course, all of these things are exemplified tenfold. It's like, well, what if the only place we can play is at the house of this player? And then he says, well, fine, then you can't play at my house. Okay, well, that sometimes the situation is pretty tough, but it is a tough one. And the most commonly where this is the toughest part is when you have a spouse or a loved one, and it's basically a package deal, and they're like, I only want to play PF2, or I only want to play 5e, and it's like, well, if they don't come, I don't come. It's tough. Alia says, I admit I feel a bit bad about putting my PF2 game on the back burner because my players love their characters and in-joke memes have spawned from them. I reached a point of critical burnout with PF2. And yeah, I mean, that is the kind of situation, again, I generally would caution you against that. When you say, don't worry, we're still playing the PF2 game, but you're kind of lying to the players. And they're like, oh, but look at this cool new game that actually gives me hope and makes me care again. And I get it. Playing a game that you're burned out on is tough. But, sometimes the key is like, not every campaign goes to 20th level. Maybe you say, hey, look, my interest in this game and campaign is kind of coming to an end, but I don't want to be unfair to you, but I also don't want you to be unfair to me. How about we keep playing? We finish this next adventure. We have a really great ending. We kind of stop. And yes, we might stop early, but I need to do something else. I need to do something, different. Andrew asks, how do you identify the core to the system? So you're not just playing Cypher D&D, Savage Worlds D&D, or Daggerheart D&D. Andrew, I don't know if I quite understand your question. How do you not just turn every game into D&D? Well, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, you need to ask yourself, what is it that D&D doesn't do for you that you want this game to do for you? And why do you think it can do that? And if the answer is hopefully something, then that's what you need to focus on more than what you would normally focus on in D&D. But I'm not sure if I understood your question 100% correct. Also, and this is kind of where I'm at, how do you gently bring up to the group that you will wrap up the current campaign, but won't go back to the current system after? It's a new system or no RPGs. You just do it like that. Now, again, you don't want to hang it over their head as an ultimatum, but you basically say, like, as you get closer to the end, you might say, hey, I just want you guys to know, like, I'm really excited about this campaign. I really like playing with you all. I love your characters, but I'm kind of burned out on whatever system we're playing. So basically it's not you, it's me, or it's more like the system. And I love playing RPGs with you all. But the same way that if we were to run this campaign back, you probably wouldn't want to make the same character again with the same race and the same class. For me, I'd love to continue to play with you all, but I'd like to play a different system. And I don't think it's fair to you all if we keep playing in this 5e or PF2 or Call of Cthulhu game that, quite frankly, I am not feeling anymore. So again, it's focus on what you do enjoy, which is them. And, and you don't have to prove, like, you could say, by the way, if you like this system and you like this game, that is totally fine. I'm not even necessarily throwing it under the bus. I'm just saying that for me personally, my interests have changed and they have moved to a different area. Let's see here. Might get, because not going to lie, that's where I'm at right now. We keep going back to PF2 of short breaks with other systems, but I'm ready to draw a line in the sand, but don't want to make it contentious. Yeah, I mean, that, again, there's some potentially tough conversations to be had there. And again, like I said, one of the big ones that often comes up is time, cost. People are unwilling to give up on that. And then sometimes, Casey, it becomes that line in the sand, which is if my group is very unwilling to play with a different system, they don't want to buy a new system, they don't want to learn a new system, they love the current system that they're playing. If I want to keep playing with them and I'm not willing to play with a new group, and then I either need to not play and not run, or I have to play just, PF2 or 5e or whatever. You need to make that personal decision, because you can't, again, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I know it's very tempting to want to force your players. Unfortunately, there's no advice I can give you on how to brainwash your players into becoming, people who are super hyped to go play, fucking Masks or something. It's not going to happen. If they're not there, they're not there. And if you don't have anybody else you can play with or anybody you want to play with, then you either have to choose no game or thing. And that's where you can say, all right, well, look, you guys don't want to play these RPG. You don't want to play a different RPG, and I don't want to play PF2. So how about we just, for the next couple of months, we hang out, we watch movies, we play board games, we just kick it, because I don't want to keep doing this to you, and I don't want you to do this to me. And then we can just see where we're at, and then you can make a decision and a call from that. John says, if only I had this advice years ago. John, listen, my advice comes from many failed attempts, and this is with a group of people that I love. But I've even had, game groups that I've tried to play with, or even at cons where, it fell flat and it wasn't the experience that I wanted to have. So yeah, I mean, this is the school of hard knocks, unfortunately. Yeah, Bob, I sat out Legend of the Five Rings first go around. That's a great example. We sat down, we played Legend of the Five Rings. Again, we did things differently than I would have done now, but we played the intro adventure, but I had them make characters. But, take that for what it's worth. I probably would have had them make, use the intro pre-gen characters now. But anyways, after the first session, Bob, very, in a very mature sense, said, I'm not feeling this game right now. I got a lot of stuff going on in my life, and learning this new game and all the kind of anxiety and pressure that comes with Legend of the Five Rings is a little bit too much for me right now. if it's all right with you, I am going to skip out. And I said, Bob, that is totally acceptable. That is great. That is fine. And he did. When we played a second time, Bob came back. And this time he was in the right headspace. Honestly, Bob had played some other new RPGs by then. Bob had played some PBTA games by then. Bob was a little bit more seasoned of a Dungeoneer. Bob had more interest. Bob had more fun. Bob was more bought in, and he made a great character, and he had a great time. And so as a result, that first time wasn't ready. Second time, he was. People can grow. But I didn't do that to Bob. Bob did that to Bob. And so that's the important part. Well, Commando, it says helps a lot if your group is a TTRPG group and not a 5e group. Let me talk about that really quick. Which is, you might see people who go, "Oh, I love going to the movies." All right. And they're a cinema fan. All right? Think about this for you personally, where you say, people go, "What are one of your hobbies?" You go, "I love to read." Right? A lot of people will say that. They say, "I love to read. I love going to the movies." Okay. So if I throw any book at you, you're going to read it? No. When you say I love to read, you love to read Brandon Sanderson, Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, R.A. Salvatore. You like to read fantasy. If I go and throw Twilight at you, it doesn't matter that you like to read. You're not going to enjoy that book. When someone says, "I love going to the movies," yeah, okay. You like going to see the big box office hits that everybody loves, the big action films, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. If I ask you, to go see, an Italian independent film, you might go, "I don't want to see this." And I'm like, "Oh, I thought you loved the movies. I thought you were a big cinema fan." And so we have to kind of be self-reflective on this. A lot of times there are many things in our lives that we like a lot, but we don't actually like we don't like everything in the spectrum. A lot of times we just like the one thing that we like. So, it is true. It does help if your group is a TTRPG group and not a 5e group. But that's a rarity. Not many people are like, "Hey, my group of friends will go see any movie, regardless of what the genre or the language or the type is." A lot of people have, their druthers. Let's see. Elia was very honest with her group. I flatly told them, "Hey, I need a break from this game. I want to play this instead, and I'd be happy to have you if you were up for it." Only one of them opted out. Okay, yeah, it's great. Yeah, that's something. My home group says Beowulf, hasn't played in months because I'm burned out on 5e and they're not willing to change systems, but they keep trying to get me to run games. Well, that's a great indication, by the way, that your group is not a TTRPG. If your group would rather, not play, then, play a different system, that's saying something about the group. Maybe they really do enjoy that game system, or maybe they really don't have any interest in playing something else. That's a tough spot to be in. But while I agree that playing online is not my favorite thing, that is the advantage specifically of Knights of Last Call. There's a lot of discords out there, public discords, free discords, where you can find players to play a lot of PF2 and 5e games. But it's the open internet and people have no skin in the game. The nice thing about, I know I'm saying this to somebody who's a member of these are all patrons, is the Knights of Last Call Patreon is self-selecting. The people who join our Patreon are people who are TTRPG people. To use, to use a Beowulf's example, right? Commando's example, right? The people who join the Knights of Last Call Patreon are TTRPG people. They're not 5e people. They are TTRPG people. So they're much more interested and willing. Number two, people have skin in the game. Nobody's going to come onto my server. If someone comes onto my server and they join in community games and they start being horrible and racist or they're gone. They're banned and they're not getting their money back. So there's sort of, you have skin in the game, and it keeps the assholes, I'm not going to lie, it keeps the assholes to a minimum. And that is a great win, Scotty P coming in with the big $50 super chat, taking over the hype boss, crushing the super chat goal. Scott, wow. Thank you, buddy. That was amazing. Looks like Scott wants some Oh, okay. He's just giving it for the great advice. I was like, maybe Scott really wants more Daggerheart coverage. Scott, thank you so much for that, man. That is very generous of you. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you appreciate the topic. I think it's, there's a lot of stuff, that goes on in our, the GM's job is a very unsung one, and it's difficult, especially when you're dealing with friends. And, you want to be open and inclusive, but it can be very, very tough. And again, all of it starts with tip advice, number one, which is have open and honest conversations with people. Treat them as adults. Be open with your thoughts and emotions, but also don't be the one. You got to be willing to meet people to a certain extent, right? You can't just dig your heels in and say, I refuse to make any concessions. Now you're being the recalcitrant one, right? Now a lot of people think, oh, damn, I'm the GM. My world is law. I think that's bullshit. Now, yes, the GM does have more responsibility. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have a little bit more voting power, but the players outnumber you, and you don't have a campaign without the players. So to a certain extent, you have to respect them, and you have to be willing to compromise to a certain degree. And if you're not, well, then you need to go find a different group. But thank you, Scott. I really greatly appreciate that. And apparently Scott is also interested in Daggerheart coverage as well. Well, Scott, honestly, forget the views that we got for the stream, which was great. Forget the live viewers, which we had for the game, which was like over 250 or something, 230, which was a ton for us. The fact of the matter is, it was a game that Bob, Aaron, and Derek all liked and were all interested in. And we had some, patrons in the chat and afterwards, folks like Vin, who also liked the game. And so when you have that many people interested in a game, that to me is very unique, and it is something worth looking at. And I don't know that Daggerheart is the panacea to all of our RPG woes. I don't think it will be, but they did some stuff right. And there can be no doubt that I think the game deserves some deeper looks. And I myself, am planning on spending some time with this 300-page beta playtest. Jesus. And taking a look at all the domains and taking a look at the cards and seeing what the quick start adventure is, maybe even figure out a way to run it. Because I think that'd be a lot of fun. Let's see here. But thank you, Scott. That was very generous of you. I don't even want to play it. Well, listen, you know what you like. That's fine. But hence I've been trying to homebrew the hell out of it. Well, that can work sometimes. But again, Casey, I dislike VTTs generally as well. But, the nice thing is, by being part of the Knights of the Last Call, you have access to what I would consider to be one of the primo communities to do that with. You have mature. Most of our patrons are either in their 40s or 50s, or if they're not, or older, if they're in their 20s, a lot of these guys are, and gals are very, very mature people. So number one, you have that. Number two, we have a very strict, I will boot someone so fast. I don't care. I don't care about the money. I'm not a shill for it. You could be a legend. You could be paying, $100 a month. If you come in and you're an asshole, you're gone. And you're not getting a refund. So the skin in the game, the inherent bias, and if you're joining our Patreon, it's because you have an interest in TTRPGs. So while I do not say also, we, the Knights of the Last Call, maintain several Foundry and Forge servers and Foundry licenses, and we will buy Foundry licenses just so that we can run games, set up stuff for people to run a community, because it's important to us, and I think it's part of a package that we offer with our membership. So there's a lot of incentives there. And again, I'm not people who we have a lot of GMs, and GMs are the best people to play with because they understand. Yeah. Beowulf is playing Masks on KLC and loving. So maybe it is. There you go. Then Bob found Dragonbane, and it was like Harry met Sally. Yeah, but Dragonbane, look, it does a lot of stuff right, point blank. I have to give them real credit for that. And I be honest with you, it still is like, I'm still like, what am I missing? because the response that I've seen on our Discord alone with this game is tremendous. I saw that Indestructible Boy got bit by it, and he's like all in on Dragonbane now. So I was like, damn, there's something about this game. And don't be wrong, I enjoy it. But you know what, to me, Dragonbane is like, it's an OSR style game that is very, very simple, but it has skills, but they're used in a very not typically skill-like way. And so a lot of people, like when they look at an OSR character sheet, there's so little there, they feel like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. This game has all these skills, even though you can really, really roll with it. But then it has just a little bit of narrow mechanical elements in it with the role-playing, with the conditions and the pushing. And then you have a little bit of gaminess with the resource management. And so I think it just hits this kind of really, it's like, it's like when you add a little bit of salt to chocolate, right? To enhance the chocolate flavor. Not a lot, just a little bit, just enough to make it, really pop. I think that's what they did with Dragonbane, I think. Casey, unpopular opinion, Pathfinder nerds are just as entrenched as 5e casuals. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think hardcore PF2 people are just as bad, if not worse, than 5e people, because they have sometimes a degree of smugness that comes with being like, I play the superior game. No, you don't. I'm not saying that one's better than the other. I'm just saying it's definitely not one of them is better than the other. So, but there's a desire, right? People make a big deal out of what they belong to, and people want to feel like the thing that they picked is the right choice. I mean, this is true for anything. This is true for politics. This is true for religion. It's also true for RPGs. Let's see here. I try any system at least once. I mean, that's generally how I feel as well. Oh, let's not talk about the Twilight baseball scene again. It's so stupid. How do you feel about the great system matter debate? Knox. Knox. What do you mean by that? I'd love to know. No Beer says, my home group is still steady on PF2, but I can tell that we have lost a lot of hype since the remaster. It feels like the game is getting stale. I think remaster, I can tell you this, Knights of the Last Call, Patreon, the remaster, I think, took a lot of wind out of a lot of people's sails, because it's sort of like a whole new game that didn't really change anything. And so it's a very, and I know people are like, the changes aren't that much. It changed enough. And it kind of feels like, wow, it feels like I'm kind of learning a whole new game in some ways, and yet none of it's different. So what's the point? I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but it's definitely a shift that I have noticed in the Patreon. Let's see. Yeah, if you don't have any players, you don't have any games. So you do have to be willing to compromise to some degree. I just want my players to watch this video. Yeah, absolutely. Share them this video, or at least maybe we'll make a clip of like when I went over just the top 15 and we can share that to people. How dare you call me mature just because I am 50? Yeah, I mean, look, I think it was Omniscitoad said it at the beginning. He said, my solution would just be wait until my players were all old enough that nobody gets all hot and bothered under the collar anymore, and then everybody's a lot more chill. That is a reasonable response. Young at 36. Yes, you 30-somethings, you young'uns. No, Beowulf. Again, that's the other thing, though. Remember, it's not Knights of the Last Call is not an echo chamber. I want people to argue. I want people to debate. I want people to vociferously defend their position, but I want them to do it in good faith. And what I mean by that is, and this is very important, this is true for this whole channel, I do not ever want anyone in my Discord to engage in a debate and engage in an argument or engage in point making if they have no intention of ever changing any of their viewpoints. If you are stuck where you're at and you are never going to change, and no matter what somebody says to you, it's not going to impact you, then stay silent and just follow along. Let the adults talk. Because the number one thing that bothers me is when people basically get into I'm right and you're wrong. And it's like, okay, well, why? Well, I don't need to tell you. And when someone says that, and it does happen on our Discord sometimes. Look, we got 400 people. it's very hard for me not to like right click on that person and just like at least, time them out. Because I just can't stand that kind of bad faith arguing. So people need to argue in good faith. This was the stream I didn't know I needed. Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Yeah. Again, it's a complicated issue. And, I'm really, I feel for people who struggle with these challenges. I mean, I've struggled with them a little bit, but by and large, I've been very blessed to have a really great, open-minded group of players. To be fair, some of that might have just come from cultivation. Look, once, long time, but I can't even say that because we started playing D&D in, the 90s, but by the time we were in high school in the late 90s, my group was playing Dragonlance Saga Edition. That's the game with the deck of cards. We were playing Earth Dawn. We were playing a little bit of Vampire the Masquerade Hunter. Like we were already experimenting with different games. Now, when 3rd edition came out, we were pretty hardcore 3rd edition for a while, but even a couple of years later, we got into Mutants and Masterminds big time. And there was a good maybe year and a half where we didn't play any D&D. I think everything was a Mutants and Masterminds campaign, which to be fair was D20. So it was like, still using the same basic engine, but it was, it wasn't fantasy swords and dragons and spells. It was superheroes. So I've just been really blessed, and I'm very appreciative of that. Hell yeah. Hopefully we can play at Origins. I mean, we're going to try to get as much of that set up as possible. We don't want it to be crazy and like try to like play a game with 20 people. So we're going to try to make it fair for players and patrons and fair for us as well. My group mate dropped out of our 5e weekly game to start a monthly Fabula Ultimate game. Yeah. I mean, that's cool. I mean, props to them. That's a tough decision to make, We want to do everything with our friends, but sometimes we can't let ourselves, we can't let our happiness be held hostage because of other people's happiness, right? At some point you need to prioritize yourself. Zero interest in Daggerheart until our stream. Now I'm eager to learn more about it. A bit surprised by that myself. Yeah, well, hey, cool. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of interesting stuff going on in that system. I have my own concerns, Brian. I am concerned that the game is very fiddly, and we will see how it plays out. But I am concerned even for me, that's saying something. I like fiddly games. There's a lot of stuff going on in there. Like, does the system we use matter? I've seen it argued a lot that just doing the thing is all that matters. Oh, Knox, system absolutely matters. Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't own all these game systems if I didn't think system matters. I think game systems should be like, tools. And I have a bunch of tools in my wood shop. Some tools are used for certain jobs, and they do that job, and they do that job very well. And when I want to go and clean up the shoulder of a tenon, okay, I go get a shoulder plane. And you know what? No other tool really does that thing correctly. Or if it does it with a lot more work and a lot more inaccuracy. So yes, it is a specialized tool, but it does what it does, and it does it really well. And I'm happy to own it, and I don't necessarily have to pull it out every time I do woodworking, but it's important to me to have the right tool for the right job. Correct. If you're not going to change your thought patterns, because now you're arguing in bad faith. Because see, I'm arguing because I'm assuming that you're listening to me, and that the words that I'm saying to you might change your mind, and you might, I'm not saying that you're going to come 100% over to my side, but maybe I'll say something that'll make you consider things differently, or ask more questions, or, become more enlightened. But if you're not going to do any of those things, then don't waste my fucking time. And at least be, upfront with me and say, hey, by the way, I just want to let you know before you start trying to make good faith arguments, I have no interest in anything that you're going to say, and nothing you say is going to matter to me. And then I'll say, okay, cool. Thanks. Bye. I hope that wasn't me today. No. Millhoser, that was a great example where we were coming at it from different perspectives, and I thought you were articulating your points very well. I thought you were making good points. I even agreed with you on some of the things that you were saying. And obviously, I'm playing the game rules as written. So, I mean, there was even a part of me that agreed with you. So no, I'm not talking about you. Look, the Ducks are dumb, but there's, every other game has way dumber races. So I'm not even gonna get into it. Good night, Bob. I myself, it's almost 9 o'clock. I myself am going to kind of wrap it up here myself pretty early. I think that storm is coming in. I can start to hear the thunder rolling in. Okay. The Ducks aren't the only thing holding you back, but they don't help. All right. Fair enough. All right. Casey says, I'm pretty sure I came into the Discord as an entrenched, pro-fudging, tactical combat F-20 snob, but have completely changed my view on all of those things over the last few years. And you know what, Casey? I hope that, that you have also changed us and we have learned from you. And I know that you especially, you're one of our regulars here in chat. I love, and not just KC, but all my patrons, there are entire swaths of this bookshelf that I bought and I'm into because of my patrons, because they got excited about a game, because they pointed something out to me, because they taught me something new. I have learned so much from them. This is very much a community. Yeah, sure. I'm the guy with the YouTube channel and all. And it's great and it's awesome, but I'm also the guy who has to buy, $1,000 microphones all the time. But like, I don't know why I brought that one up when this one was like 800. So yeah, like it's been a really cool experience for me, from the YouTube business perspective, which really is not that great, which is why I still have my full-time job. But the better part for me is I love fucking role-playing games, and I'm hanging out with people who fucking love role-playing games. And so the conversations that we have are why I continue to do what I do, which is great. Well, good evening, Quick and Dirty. I apologize that YouTube is just still trying to take me down. Come on. I talked about Daggerheart, YouTube. Give me a break. Yeah. Now, Damien is right here. We're very much in school play that game that does what you want right now instead of trying to find the one game to rule them all. That being said, I myself am aware that it can be very tempting to sort of bing, 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 and ping pong all the way around. And it's like, I want to play 3 sessions of this game, and I want to play 3 sessions of that game, and I want to play 4 sessions of that game. And, ooh, a new game came out. I really want to try it. And that can be fun. But there is something to be said about role-playing games being a story. And that doesn't necessarily have to take 50 sessions or 100 sessions. But there is something to be said. And even forget the story. There's a lot of role-playing games that I think you don't get the full experience out of that role-playing game until you've played it a bunch of times. And you've got to see how the system and how the mechanics work. One of the problems I have with complex board games is I go, this board game is great, but you need to play it like 3 or 4 times before you really know what you're doing. And then you can have a really good experience. And for a lot of people, they're like, man, I am not going to play this 4-hour board game 3 or 4 times before I get it. Like, they're just like, I'm not interested in making that kind of investment. And I get it. I understand why. But, if somebody sat down and played Avatar Legends with me one time, there's so much of that game that relies on the arc of your character and the growth moves that you make that I feel like you would just be leaving a lot on the table. And so when that first game session doesn't grab you, and then you only play a 1-shot or a 2-shot, and then you're off to the next game, I feel like you're leaving money on the table. Let's just say it that way. Are you saying that when I use a handsaw for literally everything in my house that I might be better served by a better system? Yeah, and I think, Casey, I think it's important to distinguish here between 2 different types of tools. So tool number 1, systems. System number 1 is like a screwdriver. Okay, and what does a screwdriver do? It drives in screws. Now, contrast that with like a drill driver, which can have a screwdriver head inserted into it. And it screws in screws too. It just does it better, faster, quicker, easier with a torque setting. It is by all stretch of the imagination an improvement. That's not to say that a screwdriver sometimes doesn't have its place, doesn't need charging, it's always available, it's very light. But by and large, a drill driver is going to do everything that a screwdriver can, but better. Now, instances of that in role-playing games, I think are few and far between. Now, sometimes there's a cost Again, you need a battery. It costs more than a screwdriver, et cetera, et cetera. Then there are situations where it's like, okay, I need to chisel out this mortise. I'm going to use my screwdriver, my flathead, and just bang it with a hammer. Okay. Now we're talking about we need a completely different tool. And so I think you need to distinguish when you're talking about systems between things that are really, for the most part, an upgrade versus a completely different question, a completely different task, a completely different problem space that you're trying to solve with that tool. So to your point about the handsaw, if somebody had a handsaw and then I'm like, okay, well, what about this Sawzall, or what about this multi-tool? And you're kind of like, yeah, that would probably work a lot better, or, cutting a board, with a handsaw. And you're like, what about this table saw? It's like, yeah, that's probably an upgrade for 95% of the uses cases. Sure, it's more expensive. I have to learn how to use it, but it is an upgrade. It is going to give me better results. It's going to be a better experience versus, I don't care how expensive your table saw is. It's not going to do what, a router is going to do. It's a different tool. There are some cases where, a dado stack can do what a router does, but there are, you're not going to use a table saw to put edge banding or an edge profile on your table. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little too deep in the woodworking analogies here. Well, Daggerheart is very interesting. Yes, it is a weird ground between trad and PBTA, and that's why I think it'll do very badly. Maybe it'll do really well because, I feel like Daggerheart is going to be like the Avatar Legends RPG, where it was this huge $12 million Kickstarter and like many tens of thousands of people bought it, and everybody got it and was like, yeah. And then they looked at it and went, what am I supposed to fucking do with this? And I think that's what's going to happen with Daggerheart as well. So, okay. Well, success.
I am strong.
But yeah, that's pretty funny. It completely succeeded. My previous, how do you make it not feel like Cypher D&D? Cypher has a lot of one-shot and unique magic items and opportunities to add minor and major effects to scenes, almost PBTA. My players don't engage. Yeah, it sounds like your players might not be engaging in good faith, right? They're not open to the experience. And you can't make them open to the experience, So you might need to have a conversation about that and explain to them why you're interested in this game system, and explain to them, this is what this game system does. And this is what this game system does that I think is an improvement. You need to let them, now they have to answer that question for themselves, but you ultimately are choosing Cypher because you think it can do something different, or you think it can do something better than what D&D can. Now, the powers that be will have tell you, oh, D&D it could be anything. It could be anything for anyone ever. No, I firmly believe that it cannot. There are very few games, Fate technically might be one of them, but even Fate comes with certain understandings of its play style pattern. There are very few games that can do that, and most of the time when they do that, the style in which they achieve it is fairly constant. So yeah. Thank you, Mike. Best virtual community in the universe. I don't know about that, but we're a pretty good bunch. I have, in the history of my entire Patreon, we have about 400 members currently. We aren't at 400 yet. We're getting close, but we've been dancing around for a while. Sometimes we gain, 15 people. Sometimes we lose, 5 or 10 people. People do leave. It sucks. But the good news is most of the time when people leave, they say it's because of financial reasons. And I totally understand that. They might just be trying to be nice, but if we really suck, they could always tell us, and I would be very beneficial of that. But anyways, lifetime, we have had about, 600 people, give or take, join the Discord, and we have about 400 now. Some people have come and gone. I have only ever had to ban 2 people. And the one person I didn't really even ban, I just told them that there were some problems and they got very mad and quit. So I didn't really even ban them. They just kind of quit. But I banned one person. And it's not because I'm not a draconian. I'm very draconian. And if you think I'm draconian, Smith is even more draconian. But it's because by and large, we have good people. Yeah. Damien said, Damien's answering Andrew's question. Okay. Will you be covering 13th Age second edition when it comes out? Absolutely. Love 13th Age. I love John Tweet. I love Rob Heinso. I love 13th Age first edition. I hope 13th Age second edition will be a banger. I hope they fix 13th Age doesn't really have anything wrong with it. There's just parts of it that I think need polished and could use better explanation. I've really come to not like icon dice. I like the idea of icons a lot, but there's something there that misses me now. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if I just want them to be aspects. I don't know. There's something in my 13th Age games, I've done things very differently with icons recently in the last couple 13th Age campaigns I've played. And I think I want them to do something different with the icons. I don't know that they will, but that's what I like. So yeah, I mean, we will definitely be covering it. All right. Well, it is 9:00. And again, we're going to have ourselves a nice weekend. We do not have a game. I'm going to be I'm going to be off for 2 weeks. We don't have a game tomorrow because we have Bob and Smith are both out. And, I love all my players, but Bob and Smith are the sort of the pillars of our gaming group. My good buddy George, who plays with us, he's almost always in. But when I have like two players that are kind of the drivers of the group out, it's usually a good idea for me to cancel. So 2 players out tomorrow. I don't know if Aaron's doing something with his daughter, but I think he is because Bob has, I think, a daddy-daughter dance. So my players are just being good dads. And next Friday, I will be in Vegas. So, but tomorrow, because I'm not playing RPGs, I'm going to go draft. I'm going to go team draft some Magic the Gathering with my team draft buddies, where we play for money, playing some Markov Manor. Murders at Markov Manor, I think. I don't know. Unless like a new set is out, in which case we'll play that. But so I'm going to be playing Magic games tomorrow. And then next Friday, I'm going to be playing Vegas games. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we're going to leave this tip goal out. We did get $15 on that today. But if we finish that tip goal by the time I go to Vegas, we will do a Vegas stream again. Thank you, JMH, for that. And thank you, Scott and Damien, for the super chat. Oh, and thank you, Ayla. Thank you, Ayla. Ayla says, Chaos community is okay, I guess. if you're into really interesting TTRPG discussions. But who the heck does that? Well, you had some people here tonight, like Alia, like Beowulf, people who I, don't always agree with, and they definitely don't always agree with me. And, we go toe to toe, we go tit for tat sometimes. And long story short, they are still here and they're still part of the community because I don't expect everybody to agree with me. I want people to teach me. I want people to learn from people. I want to learn from people who I respect, like Alia, like Beowulf, like, so many of my patrons who I get a chance to interact with. And so, we do have discussions and I don't want to say they get heated. I want people who care, again, just do it respectfully and do it in good faith. That's the most important thing here. Have I tried Star Wars Unlimited? No, but it's funny that you asked that, Hardrick, because a buddy of mine was over at a game store on the west side of Cleveland, and the other day he goes, "Hey, there's this new Star Wars game out. Should I buy a bunch of packs? Is it going to be worth a ton of money?" And I said, honestly, I have no idea. But I have not really tried a new TCG in a long time. Like I didn't play Flesh and Blood. I didn't play Lorcana. The last TCG LCG that I got into, new was I played the Epic card game, the one by White Wizard Studios by Darwin Castle, which I really thought was really great, but it didn't go anywhere. And I played a little bit of the Legend of the Five Rings FFG LCG, the one that recently, like in the last year or two, 2 years, 3 years, they stopped producing. They finished the set. So I have not played Star Wars Unlimited. No. Let's see here. Of course. FFG games. I mean, yes. I mean, I think FFG has made some amazing card games, very complex. I think the Legend of the Five Rings card game is great. In fact, it's funny. I actually own a bunch of FFG Legend of the Five Rings starter sets because I wanted to get all the elemental tokens to use them for my Legend of the Five Rings RPG. Which is a better way to see your money disappear, Vegas or drafting? Ooh, that's a great question. Well, okay, for starters, technically I can win in both, right? Like the last time I drafted, which was a couple weeks ago, I won all the drafts that I did. And I even got some good money cards because the way that we draft is a team draft. You're divided into 2 teams, and each of you takes a different the next position over. So you're always between 2 opponents, and then you have your ally, your teammates, and then you play each member of the opposite team. So if it's 3v3, there's technically 9 games because I'm going to play player A, B, and C, and then my number 2 is going to play A, B, and C, and number 3 is going to play A, B, and C. And so it's 9 games, and whichever team can win 5 of the 9 wins the draft. And whichever team wins the draft gets to keep all the cards. All the cards. We got Chase coming in. Thank you, Chase.
Chase tipped $3. I am an hour and a half behind on the stream, but I feel so called out by all of these comments. XD, thanks for the wake-up call about forcing my group to try new games. Very selfish of me.
Chase, again, I'm not trying to belittle you. Obviously, you're tipping, so I think you're doing it in good faith. I'm just saying we need to be honest with ourselves. And a lot of times, the reason why our players don't respond well to the GM is because we're kind of holding it over their heads. And we're not doing it for a good reason. We're doing it for a selfish reason. And we just need to be very cognizant of that. And we need to be willing to learn and grow as well. But thank you, Chase, for that. And we're that much closer to a Vegas stream. But thank you. So to finish up, so I can win money with drafts, but I can also win money in Vegas. But I'm going to be completely honest with you, Casey. I would rather lose money in Vegas than lose go 0-3 in Magic, because if I go 0-3, I get so mad. Like if I lose in Vegas, I'm expecting to lose. So I'm kind of like, yeah, cool. But when I draft, when I play Magic, I'm expecting to win, baby. And so when I don't, I get super mad. So in a weird way, I'd rather lose drafting, or I'd rather lose all my money, or most of my money in Vegas than lose drafting. For sure. Live team drafts. Yeah, we get together in person, FLGS, we crack packs, and we usually try to get like 2 or 3 or 4 drafts in, depending on where we play. We'll go late even. We're friends with the game store owners, so they'll stay open late for us. Actually, the game store that we play at is run by Dirt, who is he played Artemis, the pyromaniac hedgehog from our Root AP, and we have a great time with it. So. Drool. Yeah, I love team drafting. I mean, drafting is great. It's all I play now, Magic. I don't play Commander. I don't have a standard deck. I don't even have a modern deck. I have like 2 legacy decks. But I haven't played Legacy in 5 years, so my decks are probably completely out of what's the word? They're stale, like they're completely out of the meta. And I don't have a vintage deck anymore because I sold all my power before the pandemic to keep my business going, which then did not go. So anyways, so with that being said, I don't play constructed, and I don't play Commander at all. So drafting is how I get to play and experience the game, and I have a lot of fun with it. But yeah. London says, damn, Chase, so open and honest. You love to see it. Yeah, I mean, look. We hit hard here with the truth sometimes, I mean, sometimes I've been selfish before as well. So this is again, me coming from my experiences, my good experiences, my bad experiences as well. And I think that, Elia's last point here is good. And that's where we'll leave. It's like, I'm not asking. I don't think everybody should play all these games. I'm not going to tell you that all these games are better than the game that you're playing. I just think that it is never a bad thing to learn more, to know more, to be a more thoughtful, considerate person in your hobby, and to invest and be willing to expand your horizons. And sometimes you're going to learn, sometimes learning what you don't like is just as important as learning what you do. Correct. I'm trying to think, is there an instance where I like numbers go burr? No, not right. Not really. I'm just over that. That's just, I don't care about the numbers go burr anymore. I mean, look at me with Daggerheart when they were like, oh, you can roll multiple dice for your damage. I was like, ugh, I don't want to do that. I will never play Traveler, but I'll watch people talk about it. Whereas I'm like super hyped about Traveler. I've picked up like 4 or 5 Traveler books. Every time I go to like a con, I pick up like another book or two. I don't know if I'm ever going to get a chance to really play it, but there's something about that game that does tickle my fancy. So thank you to everybody who came in tonight and supported the channel. That's very, very awesome of all of you. Thank you to Alia. Thank you to Scott. Thank you to Damien. Thank you to Chase. Thank you to JMH for all that you've done. We did have a tip from Boothby that I missed earlier. Boothby, I don't know. Maybe it didn't come through. Maybe I missed it. So let me give you a shout out. Boothby said, curious about preferred length to try a new game. Pros and cons of pre-gens versus custom characters. How much you expect to learn in the group? We'll catch up. We'll catch up after gym night. So Boothby was tipping us before we even started. So yeah, well, Boothby, hopefully we answered it. Pros and cons of pre-gens versus custom. We talked about that. How much you expect the group to learn in advance. We talked about that. Preferred length to try a new game. I'd say keep it under 4 hours. Ideally like around 3 hours. I think that's perfect. And again, try to keep the intro component of it under half an hour. Get people playing, get people moving, get people rolling dice, get people engaging, not just in the mechanics, but in the story. Get them, engaged, because that's the most important thing. You don't have a lot of time. Don't waste it. There's an old saying, which was 200 minutes in a bonus encounter. I'm going to go to real quick. This is how we're going to end. I'm going to go over to my whiteboard here. This was an article written a long time ago for RPGA, which is RPGA was the Adventure League before the Adventure League. RPGA stood for Role Play Gamers Association, right? It was basically the precursor to the heck. Oh, there we go. It was basically the precursor to that. So, in RPGA, which was typically played at a convention, okay. So, if you've ever been to a convention, if you've ever played in Pathfinder Society or whatever, but even at conventions, everything is basically in 2-hour or 4-hour slots. In the event book, usually you have there's like an 8 a.m. to 12 noon slot. And then there's like a 2 to 6. And then there's like a 6 to 10. This is like usually what they do. And so the idea was when you used to play in the RPGA, which again was like, yeah, exactly, Michael. It was kind of like D&D competitive play. It was actually kind of sweet in a weird way. I kind of liked it. But anyways, you had 4 hours. And so Andy Collins, who was a big designer at D&D at the end of 3rd edition and was a big lead designer at 4th edition, he wrote this great article called 200 Minutes and the Bonus Encounter. And the reason why he called it this is this was an article written for people who were trying to write for the RPGA. And the idea was, okay, in your 4-hour slot, okay, you have 240 minutes. Now, you should expect that you're going to lose, maybe 30 minutes to administration and just getting everybody sit down and getting everybody playing. And then you might lose another 10 minutes at the end of the session for wrap up and making sure you get everybody's information. So that means that you are left with 200 minutes to entertain and do your encounters with the players. And then this is the idea of like, if you assume that, depending on what level they are and depending on what the system is, you might say, okay, I believe that the average encounter is going to be about 45 minutes. So you're like, okay, so if I get like 4 encounters, that'll be about 180 minutes. And then it's like, all right, if you think you could fit 4 encounters in your 200 minutes, or maybe you think you can fit 5 encounters in, design your 5 encounters plus 1 bonus encounter. Something that if the group does really well, okay, that you can throw in just so that they're not sitting there with an hour left with nothing to do. And that was how he sort of designed RPGA encounters. And like, this is kind of like a philosophy that I will sometimes use when I am preparing to do a one shot or something like that. I'll say, okay, I've got 3 hours. I think each encounter is going to take about an hour. I want to prep 3 encounters that are like mandatory, sort of the A plot, the B plot, the C plot. But I also want to have this optional D encounter that I can put here. So if they get through A really fast and they get through B really fast, if I went to C, then the session would be over and we'd have a bunch of time to kill. Okay, I'm going to run encounter D, then we'll go to C. And this again is like, it's like the bonus boss, like the extra unlock. So anyways, I don't know why that made me think of that, but I think we're wrapping up. It's almost 9:00, so we're going to wrap up. Nope. I'm done. So that's going to do it for us. Again, hopefully you enjoyed this. I think we did have a nice summary at one point, so I'll probably clip that and try to put that on the YouTube channel, get more people seeing us and interested in us. Again, I really encourage you to check out Daggerheart. I think it's really great, and I think it's worth your playtesting. And I don't know when we're going to be back Tuesday. I don't know. It's a studio stream, so I don't know what we're going to do. That being said, we probably only have a couple studio streams left because we're going to have to start breaking down the studio. We'll probably have a Patreon only breakdown stream where, we just endlessly bitch and nothing that I would ever want to put on YouTube. It'll be a private stream just for the patrons. As I get Smith and Bob up there to help me break everything down, start taking down all the lights, taking down the setting. It's going to be both horrendous and sad. But I don't want to be, rushing at the last minute to get out of there and then have a landlord giving me shit and stuff like that. I want to make sure I get out of there with plenty of time. So we probably only have a couple studio streams left. And then it remains to be seen what will happen. But the knights will be in exile. And what does that mean? We don't know. We'll figure out. Anyways, but we'll be back Tuesday. And if we do well on the tip goal on Thursday or Tuesday, then I will be doing a live stream from Vegas, which I've done a couple of times, thanks to the support of viewers like you. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for me. Until next time, talk to your players, ask them what they're interested in, ask them if they have any problems, think about yourself honestly, and be an adult. And be open and honest with yourself and your players. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Good night, everybody.